Hello.
Hello.
Can you
Hey,
hear
how are
me?
you?
So good. I need to add a filter because I'm looking funky today.
Oh
Can we do
no,
this?
you look cute.
I'm
Stop.
like, all right, can we add a filter here? Is that possible? It may not be able to be possible, and then we'll just have to deal with it. How are you?
Okay, good. I couldn't hear you for a second, but I'm
Oh
good. How
no,
are you? It's so good to see
I'm
you.
good. You too, my friend.
Yeah, I feel like it's good to just sit and see you for a second. I feel like we're always like writing emails rush late at night or
Uh-huh.
talking from a car in transit.
Right. I know. It's so true.
So it's nice to see you and talk. And I
You
meant to ask earlier,
too.
but I hope your daughter's feeling better.
She is, and now Mama is down.
Oh no.
I
I'm
know.
sorry.
I think mothers, it should be illegal for us to get sick, honestly.
Yeah,
And
it
so
should.
like you still power through and then my husband's like, "Are you really sick?" I'm like, "If I say I'm sick, I'm sick." But I have
I
no
mean,
choice but to like continue.
there's no other option.
Yeah.
I've been drinking a lot of water and trying to deal with it, but I have this horrible cold, and it's like so foreign to me the last 2 years of COVID
Yeah.
restrictions and kids being home. It's like, what's a cold or a flu anymore? I don't remember what it feels like, so it hits really
Right.
hard.
Yeah. And it's like a mind thing. You're like, "What do I have?"
Yeah, what is going on? What is this
I'm
weird
like,
feeling that I used to feel 10 times a year?
I know. I'm like, "Is it allergies?"
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I think you
Well,
look really cute and I love your hair.
thank you. Thank you for inviting me on today.
Sorry?
Thank you for inviting me on today.
Of course. We're so honored to have you as our special guest today. And actually, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, but for those just joining, Marilyn is the founder of Infertilities, which is inspired by her own journey, which included a very difficult entire decade trying to conceive. She does have an amazing daughter, though, but just experienced and learned a lot from both the physical and the emotional journey. I look forward to getting into all of that. She experienced stereotypes that women of color often encounter, experienced advocating for herself for insurance benefits, and actually having some favorable outcomes based on some of those efforts, which we look forward to learning from, and just so much more. And, we created a beautiful family and a beautiful brand that supports so many others dealing with this journey, dealing with similar pain and vulnerability, but I think also similar strength and ownership of the journey. I hope I
Mhm.
said that in the way you would agree with, but
You
that's how I
did.
see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can't wait to get to all of that, but I also just wanted to thank those of you joining today and also joining after, watching after. Thank you to those who submitted questions. They are all on the list. If you do have questions that you didn't get to ask in advance, please feel free to do so in the comments and we will get to them as well. Marilyn has said several times that she's an open book, so really
Mhm.
appreciate that.
I know, Rebecca, you're like, "Can I ask?" I'm like, "You can ask me anything."
Thank you. Thank you for that so much. And just finally, for those new to us at GoStork, we are the first fertility marketplace where intended parents find, compare, and connect with top fertility providers. Our mission is to provide inclusive, trusted access to affordable fertility care. So there's so much more about that on our website. It's the largest free database of fertility providers. You can learn all about providers, filter by our preferences, compare them side by side, chat or book appointments directly, and really help get your process and journey started all in one place, so much easier than ever before. And if you need fertility financing along the way, you can apply for a loan. But that's not what we're focused on today. Through these Instagram lives, we really love to just help bring transparency and support and information to new intended parents just beginning this journey or kind of struggling through it. So that's just another reason we're so grateful to have you, Marilyn, here. And, without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to you and just hear your story to
Hi.
start. Can you
Gosh.
share your family building journey and that background to your, you
Yeah,
had your amazing daughter, but it really did continue from there, right? So we just
absolutely.
love to start from there.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready?
And we're ready.
Feel when I tell it, I'm like, gosh, that's a lot. Every time I tell my story, I'm like, that's a lot, Marilyn. So I got married in 2009. It was July of 2009, and we've always wanted to have a family. And so we started trying like 3 months after we got married. So it was like September, we started trying, and then my husband's like, "Well, why isn't it working?" We were just like a few months in, right? But like we were having unprotected sex. So, my red flag was up. I know. I'm like,
Talk about
sorry,
that here.
but I was like, you know, this has been happening for a while, and now we're like actually trying, and I've never been pregnant. So I was like, let's just go to the OB. So I go to the OB, and of course they ask you, have you been trying for a year? So I lied because how are they going to check? You know, I was like ready to go. I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
I've been trying for a year. So she's like, well, let's get you on Clomid. And I was like, easy. Gets me on Clomid. I'm like doing research online. I'm like, Clomid twins. I'm gonna have twins. Oh my gosh, this would be great. And then it didn't work. And it didn't work, Rebecca, for 6 months. And I was doing it back to back to back. I was like, I'm a Capricorn, like I'm relentless, goal oriented, very driven. I'm like, we're gonna do this month after month. And it didn't work. And then one of my colleagues at the time had gotten pregnant from a fertility doctor. And like I didn't know that it was called a reproductive endocrinologist. I just thought fertility doctor. So it was kind of in the back of my mind. And once I was driving and I got off on the wrong exit and I saw a facility that said reproductive endocrinologist. And I was like,
Mhm.
I wonder what that is. So I pulled over and I Googled it and I was like, oh, this is like the fertility doctor. So I walked in, I made an appointment, and it was a very interesting experience because the doctor gave me a lot of hope. He was like, you're young. During my first appointment with him, he asked me about my family history, how many siblings my parents have, like what my heritage is. And so when I told him I was Latina, he was like, oh, Latinas and Latinos are very fertile. So let's check your cervix. Let's see what's going on in your uterus. Let's see if everything's okay. And then you won't have a problem getting pregnant. And I was like, okay, this, the
Sounds
RE said
good.
so,
Mhm.
right? So I scheduled my laparoscopy. They went in and he found tons of polyps, right? Removed the polyps. And this is in a span within like a year. I know I'm like giving the Cliff Notes version of this, right? And like as I'm coming out of anesthesia, he was like, we found tons of polyps. Like you won't have a problem getting pregnant. If you want, you guys should have sex right here and you'll get pregnant. And I was like, thought that was a little bit odd, but then
Yeah,
he gave me so much hope.
a little
And
much to
so
say out loud.
yeah, I know, I was like, okay.
Mhm.
And by this time, you know, I didn't think I was infertile. Like the doctors just kept telling me, oh, like everything's fine. We just need to move this out of the way and then you'll be able to get pregnant. And during this time, my husband got a job. We were living in Orlando. He got a job in Salt Lake City. So we packed up our little condo, moved to Salt Lake, and this was in late 2012. And I found an RE. Like on the drive, we drove cross country, which was insane. On the
Wow.
drive there, I find this RE, and I'm like, I'm coming from Orlando. Like, I need to see you immediately. And we moved in straight to IUIs. Like, they did just like the typical blood work. And of course, like, I didn't know what questions to ask. This was like Instagram was just now starting out. Not a lot of people were talking about infertility
Mhm.
and options and questions like, this is what you need to ask your provider. And we did 7 IUIs back to back, and I never got pregnant.
Mhm.
And finally, I was like, this is effed up. Like, no one's giving me any answers. Something's not right. So during that time, one of the women in the TTC, if you search hashtag TTC trying to conceive, like you could get connected with everyone that's trying to conceive.
Right.
One was like, why don't you
And
ask him
back then it
about,
was still small compared to now. It's just,
right, exactly.
yeah,
And so
so much
she's
more
like, why don't
support.
you ask about, yeah, vitamin D levels? Like, here's some questions to ask him. And I sat down and asked him questions, and he laughed me off. He was just like, made me feel so stupid. And I was like, is it possible that vitamin D would, impact my fertility? Is it possible that, and I just had these questions, and he was like, nope, there's not enough studies, and just really brushed me off. And he was like, well, the next step I recommend is IVF. And then in that moment, I said to myself, I'm not going to continue to pay this doctor to try to get me pregnant. If this is how he's treating me when I'm asking him questions about my health, like you have to hire your doctor. And I wanted to remind everyone that like part of advocating for yourself is self-advocacy. You have to remember that we hire our doctor. And so I found another RE. I was like, this guy's not going to be able to get me pregnant. So I find another RE and I did my first IVF in 2013. That RE was like, let's do an IVF because until then, we really won't know what's going on. Like, we need to do this to get some answers. In the meantime, I was like, still feeling like I'm not really infertile, but I was getting desperate and it was
Mhm.
just like I was ruining my relationships around me. I just didn't want to do anything. Like, I was just fixated on that. Like, that was my goal. And
It's all
my first
consuming.
IVF, it's so
And you don't have
consuming.
answers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so consuming. And um, I'm Latina. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about this reproductive health in our
Hmm.
community at all. And so, sorry, my husband just walked in the room. I'm doing a live right now. Thank you.
Hello.
Just walks in like super sly. I'm like, right here. Sorry. So, in our community, we just talk about like, don't get pregnant until you're married, right? That's it. And then if
Hmm.
you're married and you're struggling getting pregnant, you just do not share the intimate details of like the bedroom with anybody. That's just like private thing, right? So I was kind of chit-chatting about it with a few people on Instagram, but like my family members didn't know. I was literally holding everything inside. And so when my first IVF failed, it was a chemical pregnancy. Like I was devastated, and I started to share with my parents, and then they're like, just pray, like just pray. And I grew up in a very conservative household, and I was like, I don't think that's the answer at this point. It's not working. Um, and
You
so
can pray for me, and I love you,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm
and
I'm
that's a
gonna
very
take some other.
common thing with the Latino culture, right?
Hmm.
Like you're not faithful enough if what you want is not working. Like you have to like pray.
Hmm.
And so I immediately scheduled my second IVF, and it worked. It worked, and then I started to miscarry on Christmas Day, that was brutal for me. Like that's when it became real. I was like, oh my God, like I'm infertile. Like this is not
COVID,
working. Yeah.
IUI, and IVF. Hmm.
Yeah, it was just so much. And my husband was like, if we're going to do this again, you've got to go to therapy. And if I, asterisks of advice, while you're trying to conceive, the best gift that you can give yourself is going to therapy with your spouse or your partner. And I didn't do that.
Hmm.
I
I
just,
think on your
because,
own as well as together and with a specialist in who
yeah,
really understands infertility and the family building journey, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And luckily I found a phenomenal therapist. So I went one-on-one, and then I attended group therapy with five other women that were just like me, and to this day we're all very close.
Oh.
So that kind of helped me prepare for IVF number three in a way. Like I said, I'm in a good place. If this doesn't work, then I'm ready to close this chapter and like adopt a bunch of dogs and like rescue animals. Like I was just ready to do it, to just like be done. So I was completely neutral going into my third IVF. And so yeah, I did my third IVF in 2015, and actually yesterday was my transferversary.
Oh.
So 6 years ago yesterday, I transferred two genetically normal embryos, and it worked. I mean, I got pregnant with one, and it was just a whole mind f. It was like this worked, but like this is not real. Like I'm still in the twilight zone about it. And so my daughter was born in June of 2016.
It's hard to wrap your head around it. Like it doesn't feel real until, for some people, until they're born, I
Yeah.
think.
And even then you're like,
Yeah.
am I dreaming? Like, because
Yeah.
you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then other issues arise, right? You get anxiety,
Hmm.
all these things. You just are just constantly waiting for bad news. Um,
I
and
think there's too much judgment out there for women who have infertility and working through pregnancy and after all the fear and anxiety, but sometimes that feeling of not connecting. And people almost just expect you to be so happy that it finally
mhm,
worked. But
mhm.
there's actually higher levels of that feeling of disconnect or fear or anxiety, of course, as would be intuitive. But people don't realize that, I think,
Well,
enough.
yeah, because you get so much support while you're trying to conceive from the community, right? And then you're
Mhm.
pregnant, and then you're just like everyone mutes
Happy,
you, blocks
perfect.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're pregnant, you've made your goal, and then you have no one to support you through pregnancy, and it's
Hmm.
very isolating. And for my second IVF, I did freeze two embryos, and I sat on them for about 4 years. And then in August of 2019, I was like, you know what? It's now or never. I'm just going to transfer these two. Like I've always wanted a big family. And so I transferred them, and I miscarried. It didn't work. And then I was like, I'm done. Like I am done. So I just buttoned up that chapter, and I just said, goodbye. I am done. Like
Hmm.
you have to get to a point where you have to rewrite the story that you've imagined that you were going to have like your entire life. you know, you're like, okay, now I have to rewrite this thing and I'm good. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's so hard when I think you set expectations and get so tied to them. I don't know anyone whose exact family building plan, exact birth plan, exact everything all happened. And
Hmm.
it helps to go into it with an open mind that there might be different outcomes than you expect, although that's of course so
Yeah.
hard to do. But um, I've met your daughter over Zoom and she's amazing. So
She's so cute.
and so coming out of that, and I want to get back to so many specific things you talked about, but coming out of that, you know, and creating Infertile Teas, we'd love to hear all about that inspiration and, you know, that professional journey. I know what wearing the shirts means to you and means to your fans and your customers out there, you know.
Yeah. So in August of 2019, when I was planning my frozen embryo transfer, I was like, I'm going to research a cute t-shirt to wear for my transfer day. And I went online and I couldn't find anything that was my style. Like I'm very, like, I like to zhuzh my outfit up with lots of accessories, but I like my basic like white, gray, black
Mm-hmm.
t-shirts and jeans. Like it's just like my wardrobe staples. I didn't like anything. It was just not my style. And so as a self-taught graphic designer, I was like, I'm just going to design my
Make
own
my own.
and have this local print shop here in the town I live in print it up for me and then I'll wear it. And that's what I did. And then, like, on my transfer, at the clinic, everyone was commenting on my t-shirt. I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of had that in the back of my mind. And then I was like, you know what? Like, maybe there's something here. And so when I miscarried, I really turned to creativity, well, of course, and therapy, to
Mm-hmm.
like start the healing process, to just kind of get my mind off of what just happened to my body in the last 10 years, because it was brutal. And so I started just designing t-shirts. And then I was like, I made an Instagram page. I thought Infertile Teas, that's cute.
Mm-hmm.
Started an Instagram page. And I was like, if you like a t-shirt, just send me a DM and
Mm-hmm.
then you can Venmo me. And then one day I had so many Venmos, I was like losing track. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, maybe this is a thing.
Now when people ask, where did you get that? Like, from me, it's, you have the
Yeah.
answer. You go to my page.
Yeah. So I started building my website. I
Mm-hmm.
taught myself how to do it and I could have hired it out, but for me it was like I wanted to really submerge myself into learning something new to kind of forget about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
yeah, that's what
creative
I
outlets
did.
can be therapeutic.
It
I mean,
really
even
is.
like fertility coaches and therapists will tell you to journal or do art therapy and other things like that, but you actually have such a talent and a skill that it's amazing that you created that.
Yeah. And so for me, it was like, how do I pour back into this community that poured into me? Like through making people feel seen and heard and validated without having, you know, a t-shirt splashed on your a graphic tee splashed on your chest that
Oh,
says, "Hey, I'm infertile. IVF."
look who, speaking of rescue animals,
Oh,
we rescued
listen.
the dog before when we were trying to have kids, and it was hard for a while. And so she's been our rescue animal. She's amazing. But anyway, go
I
on.
rescued mine a month before my transfer that I got pregnant with Mila. I
Mm-hmm.
rescued mine, so that's where my inspo was. So
I
yeah, I
think
just
she's
wanted to
protecting our
create.
house. Something must be outside. I
Oh,
apologize for
well,
everybody.
at least you have your little alarm system behind you.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if I see anything sneak up behind you.
Okay. Thank you.
And so yeah, I thought, I know there's people like me that want to feel seen, heard, and validated without necessarily wearing something that says like the doctor's gonna knock me up today and like all these like
Yeah, the phrases.
yeah the
Yeah.
phrases, which is totally fine. That's totally fine. Everyone has their different style and taste. And so so yeah, I started Infertile Teas and it's been like every time someone sends me or tags me on a photo wearing the garments that I designed, my tears come out of my eyes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel so honored that people have chosen Infertile Teas to weave into their journey, right? Like I feel like a piece of me is with them. And so, and every time I sit and like pack up an order, I'm like, I wonder if this person is having their frozen embryo transfer. And I just like wonder, but some of my customers, a lot of my customers actually will write a note in their notes app. Like I had an order come through this morning and she was like, this is for my embryo transfer in 2 weeks and wish me luck. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so you know, when I go and pack her order, I will be thinking about that customer. I just got goosebumps,
Yeah.
but it just feels like, an honor for me to do that.
And they know it's you packaging it up and
Hmm.
sending it. So they're
Yeah.
sending personal notes. I love that. And I think you had a
Yeah.
story about someone who you ended up naming a product after her, and then her
Yes.
village all bought the same shirts. I
Yeah.
love
It
that.
was a hat. Yeah. I named, yeah. So I started to, you know, name all my product off of out of after women because it affects so many of us that
Mhm.
we don't even realize it.
Yeah, I love that. And also, it's obviously not just t-shirts. For anyone who's not aware, the accessories are really cute. The pineapple headband is my favorite.
It's
So
coming. I sold out the day we hung up.
no,
I
that's
owe
not
you a
what
headband.
yeah,
Yes, I'm a woman of my word.
I'm gonna post pictures wearing it as soon as I have it, and for just for all of you guys watching, we're going to be doing a giveaway really soon. So look for that on our Instagram in the coming weeks. We'll be partnering up to give away a product, anything of your choice if you're the winner. So I'm very excited for that. And so now I'd love to get, more specifically back into your fertility journey and just a few things you experienced and learned along the way. And so you talked a little bit about hiring your physician, right?
Hmm.
So how did you assess what you needed and make sure that they're on the same page as you? How did you make your decision? And then also just think through if you were really getting what you hoped for once you started working together.
Yeah. So in between like IVF2 and IVF3, there was a woman in the infertility community. She sent me a DM and she's like, "Hey, I know that you're in between IVF cycles. I truly recommend that you visit this other clinic." We were living in Utah at the time, and the other clinic was in Colorado that she was recommending. She's like, "Just like give it a shot." My friend got pregnant there and she like has horrible eggs. And I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility. And she's like, "There's no reason why you can't get pregnant." I was like, "Okay, fine." And so I did a ton of research. Now you can Google like what to ask your RE and there's blogs and articles about it. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
that back then.
Or come to our site. We have an article about what to ask your
Yes, yeah. It wasn't like that
Actually
back
written
then.
by Jay Palumbo, who we love, Wonder Woman writer. Yeah.
Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah.
And so I went in with 10 questions. I was like, I need 10 questions. And it was a phone consult first. And I liked that the doctor was just like quick and to the point, like no fluffy language, no guarantee, just like very matter of fact. And I was like, okay, he may not have like the bedside manner, but at this point, I don't need somebody to like, you know, rock me and like
Like
make me
pat you
feel
on the
warm
head.
and
Yeah.
fuzzy. No, I need a doctor that gets the point and gets me pregnant. And so, and it was like that every step of the way. I went for a 1 day workup, all of my tests, everything, like every single one of my answer or questions were answered in a way that I understood. And when I didn't understand, they took their time to explain it to me. So I found that
Mm-hmm.
very, very key when you're hiring your doctor.
And that
Like
was
find a
compared to
doctor,
the
yeah,
prior
like find
one.
a doctor that is like willing to dialogue with you about it. Um, I mean, that is so important.
Mm-hmm. And so then from there, you stayed with that doctor and continued, right?
Yeah, yeah. Stay with that doctor and continued. And
Yeah.
it worked.
And I think you also mentioned something about just educating yourself on what to look for, like positive ovulation results can mean hormone levels raised, but not necessarily eggs
Yeah, like
released, et cetera. But I think
you have to be an expert on your body and your health. Like you can't
right,
just take things at
you know
face
yourself
value.
best.
Yeah,
That is
you know your body better than anybody else. So if you go to your doctor and you're saying, I'm getting my period X amount of days, do I have PCOS? Like these are the tests that I need to have. Like you're hiring your doctor, you're telling them like, let's work together and this is what I'm looking for.
mm-hmm.
And so, and I think sometimes we're afraid to do that. I mean, it's part of self-advocacy is just like really being able to speak up for yourself.
Right. We think they're the expert, but we have to be more of the expert on our own body and,
Hmm.
come in there understanding what we need answered.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that advice. And okay, so moving on. Unfortunately, we know this does happen, but like you said earlier, you experienced some stereotyping as a woman of color, particularly around fertility. And I think you also shared some examples just about what you see in like the physical environments of certain providers or the promotional materials. And I just, would love to hear your perspective on this in general, what you encountered and what you think should be improved in the future to just improve inclusivity overall.
Yeah. And I think like before diving into the nitty gritty of it, I think people should understand that like women of color, um, our cultures are very different, right? We're brought up to like talk about certain things and then not talk about certain things. And so the way that we're educated when it comes to reproductive health is very different than other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're infertile and you go to a clinic, typically fertility clinics are located in areas where they're more white, right? And so it's less likely for a person of color to go to an area where it's predominantly white to seek medical health care or reproductive health care, because in their own areas we're being gaslighted already, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you walk into a
And
facility,
when you say gaslight in this scenario, do you mean told that
you're
they
not being
are
heard.
fertile,
Yeah,
or told
right.
that
Told
they're
that they're
not
fertile.
understanding?
Told, yeah, hey, Regina with Broken Brown Egg talks about, her experience in PCOS and things that she was experiencing, and her doctor
Mm-hmm.
like not really listening. And she's like, hold up, I know my body better than you know my body, right?
Yeah,
And so we
I
we
love
get
her.
gaslit. I know she's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. We get gaslit a lot. And then when we get there, the pamphlets, the marketing, doesn't feel very welcoming. And then, it's just not, it just feels different. I mean, it just feels very different. So I think what we can do to get better is, I keep going back to self-advocacy, is really getting involved with organizations that support women of color. You have the Cade Foundation, Broken
Mm-hmm.
Brown Egg, Fertility for Color Girls, and there's
I
a few
love
other ones
Dr.
as well.
Stacy as well. She's
Yeah.
so amazing. Mm-hmm.
hmm And so it's very important to like partner with those organizations to really have that support system while you navigate
Mm-hmm.
your infertility journey.
We're launching our fertility clinics marketplace really soon. So we have our surrogacy agencies, our egg donors, and our loans, and we're so thrilled to be launching this. And we're actually working with Fertility for Colored Girls and just have a list of clinics that are really inclusive and have gone through certain trainings and such. And so we'll be notating that, just like we show which providers are LGBTQ friendly and really
Mm-hmm.
welcoming to international parents and have good experience there. We'll also be doing that for women of color and those that have shown kind of excellence in that area. So it's just,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that's a helpful resource to be able
Mm-hmm.
to sort by that and see all in one place and just really on the same page. And again, I'm just like sorry that you go through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Just adds to a hard.
and you don't even realize that it's happening until you're
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, they're not literally giving me the answers that I'm asking, or the
Right,
questions to the answers that I'm asking.
right. They're just giving you
Yeah,
the answers that
yeah,
they want to
yeah.
give, and it's not really, yeah.
Right. It's what I call as template matching. Like they just match you as a template, like they have a general template already,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not diving deep into your specific body type and what your body needs to conceive.
We have to catch up later, but the whichever clinic you loved and ended up working with the end, and love to hear more about
hmm
that.
Yeah.
And so, thank you so much for sharing that and your thoughts there. And can you also walk us through, I guess we'll call it your insurance journey?
Oh,
I know you went through, I think, house
listen.
ending, and I'd love to know some takeaways because you had some really good ways to go about advocating for yourself there and had some positive outcomes that I think people might not realize certain ways to ask for things or
Dealing with insurance is a literal nightmare. Like it's the worst thing ever. And there should be like an interim person that just like deals with it for you, that you just hire, like deal with my insurance for me because I'm already going through all of this emotionally and I
That should
cannot
be a
handle it
new
anymore.
provider in the fertility ecosystem. Should be an or insurance consultant or insurance coach. Like
Progeny
I
does
almost
it.
want to
Yeah.
just yeah. But it's like
Yeah.
I almost want to like hand a stack of papers to just like a person.
Like, here you go.
Yeah,
Take care of this for me. Make sure I don't
yeah,
overpay.
yeah.
So, when I was getting ready for IVF number two, um, I remember going to the billing department. Like they wouldn't even schedule me anything until like I went to billing, right? And I think about this meme I saw the other day of like the office manager saying, "Stop by billing when you're going through infertility," and like the person's like running really fast. I was like,
There are
okay.
so
So
many memes about
I
that.
know. So I'm like sitting in billing, and she's like, "Yeah, you've met your maximum coverage with infertility," and I was like, how? Like I did not know how, or understand how. Like it just didn't make sense to me. And I remember leaving the office and like collapsing outside, like on the floor, sobbing, like I couldn't even hardly catch my breath.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up the phone and I called like my insurance company, and I was like, I needed like an itemized list. I need to go through this. And so I learned that some clinics, well, in my case, the clinic that I was going to, were coding basic things like blood work, ultrasounds, and things like that under my infertility umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And that was eating into my maximum amount. And then I later learned, like the clinic that I went to afterward, where I conceived my daughter, they were like, "Oh, this is how we code it, so it doesn't go into your
Mm-hmm.
maximum coverage." And at that point, I was with a new employer, so like my coverage was reset. I like 15K. Seems like a lot, but it like really isn't. Adds
It
up very
really,
quickly.
no. I mean,
Adds up very
it's
quickly.
great that more and more companies are adding fertility benefits, and I think they also understand. I mean, some of it's out of the kindness of their own heart, but some of it's to, you know, acquire and retain top female talent, right?
Yeah,
But it's almost hard for them to understand that 15 doesn't get you very far, although it's very much appreciated versus 0. And
yeah,
it's nice to see that more and more companies are adding benefits also for the LGBTQ community. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I find a clinic that will work with you and like explain things to you as to how they're
mm-hmm.
coding things, right? I think it's so important to just be savvy and on top of that. And
Right.
when I went in for my third IVF or planning it, they were like, "Well, we only do." This was the clinic I got pregnant with my daughter. They're like, "You have to do genetic testing. That's like the only way we accept patients." So I was like, "Genetic testing? How much is that going to cost me?" And so I think they quoted me like 11,000, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like insane." Um, and then the nurse, while she was drawing my blood, she's like, "Call your insurance company right now." And so I was like, I'm like, I don't know what to tell them. And so she was like telling me what to tell them. And then it was just like a game of telephone of
Mm-hmm.
like how this needs to be coded. Because the insurance company,
That's
they're like,
amazing.
this is an elective thing. And I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
this may be the reason why I'm not getting pregnant. So this is the only way I can find out. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not a elective. It's like I have no other
I
choice.
love that they helped you explain directly to your company and find a clinic or push them to help you do this, right? To
Hmm.
help you with just the right words to say to
And
get,
ask.
yeah.
You
And
literally, like,
and
all we need to
what
do
to
is
push
ask.
them to code it as, because women who don't go through infertility have ultrasounds and have the same blood draws often, and so that shouldn't go against your fertility benefits, right? If they can just
Hmm.
code it differently. So it's a really good
Hmm.
tip. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, I actually had to pay for my genetic testing up front, but my insurance company reimbursed me. So it was nice.
That's great.
Hmm.
That's such a good takeaway. So thank you. And one other vastly important topic that really can't be overlooked is the overall emotional process one must walk through, and specific emotional hurdles along the way. And so, what would you tell someone just beginning their journey, aside from getting a therapist, right? But what would you tell someone just beginning their journey about what to expect, what it feels like to go through this, and also, for example, what it feels like to go through that decision, to stop trying for a second child? Just how did you get through it?
That's a lot to answer, Rebecca.
I
Okay.
know this
So,
question comes. We had even more about this from the community. You'll see.
so when I do like my talks, right? And when I've led small groups, there's three pillars that I swear by and that I always recommend to people that are starting off their journey, right? It's self-advocacy, community, and healing. Self-advocacy, you have to really be okay with advocating for yourself. For example, let's say you're at a restaurant and you order a steak, right? You get your steak and it's not cooked the way you want it. There's two types of people. One, they'll eat it because they're just not gonna send it back. And the other person's gonna be like, this isn't good enough. Like, this is not how I want my steak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a form of self-advocacy is standing up for yourself, and it's okay to do that. You're not being mean. And when
Mm-hmm.
you when it comes to your reproductive health, you're literally dealing with your body. Like there's no one else is going to do that for you. You are your own house, and you have to advocate for yourself. Community, find your people and love them hard. So following the hashtags TTC, joining different organizations, become a member of different organizations, like really put yourself out there, because you're going to meet people that are going to root for you. And then you can do that for them as well. For me, it was very healing to be part of, when I did group therapy, to be part of the healing of other people while I was trying to figure out myself. And then number three is healing. Like, okay, you're seeing a reproductive endocrinologist because you're starting off your infertility journey. It's not going to be easy. Get a therapist. You have to do that. You owe it to yourself, because if we don't release that, like energetically, we are absorbing all of that, and stress can do a number on your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think that kind of answers this, but we had an even more specific question. Just how did you find the strength to keep going, and when is it time to call it quits? It was someone who wanted to share that she had been through 6 IVF for IUI for 2.5 years. She does have a child previously, but is now in her late 40s and just is at a situation where she's trying to make the decision and has a very low chance of success, and is just kind of running out of energy. So
Yeah.
she just wanted to know, how did you find the strength to keep going, as well as to make, your decision in the end?
Gosh, it's so hard to answer, I feel like, because like the strength that I found to keep going was that I wanted to become a mother. My therapist once asked me, and she's like, is it your goal to get pregnant or to become a mom? And I was like, well, both. Like, I want to experience pregnancy and become a mom. And if I can't experience pregnancy, then that's when I know that, like, I'm going to close that chapter and I have to be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I conceived my daughter, and then we were planning our following IVF 4 years later to expand our family, I was ready. I was like, I literally cannot control this anymore. And for my mental health, like, I have to be okay if this doesn't work with closing the chapter and walking away. And you have to really like look yourself in the mirror and be like, why do I want more children? Is it familial pressure? Is it that we've created this narrative in our head like that, oh, only children are lonely, or they are missing out on a sibling? And well, first of all, they've never had a sibling. They're not going to miss it. And
Mm-hmm.
only children are not lonely. They've got their parents,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And
Like,
their community.
and then, yeah. And so for me, I leaned into, I did a poll on my Instagram, and I was like asking the adults, hopefully no kid was watching my Instagram stories, but like, are you an only child? And so the people that answered yes, I DM'd them. I'm like, tell me about it. Like, tell me about your experiences being a single child. Every single answer that I got, Rebecca, was like, I loved being a single child. I loved spending individual time with my parents. I loved the close bond that I had with my family. My parents had extra money, and so we were able to do this. We did vacations, and it was just like, Lord, I just got goosebumps. And I was like, okay, yeah. And so you have to focus on the bright spots, like the benefits
Mm-hmm.
of like having one child. And of course, there will be triggers at the beginning. Like for me, it was like during the holidays, seeing 3 stockings. I'm like, I really wanted 5 stockings, like, or more,
Mm-hmm.
And those are things that you'll work through if you can identify those triggers. And then now it's like, I can't even imagine. Like, I feel like I got myself back faster now that I've got one.
Yeah.
And my daughter and I have a great relationship, and she knows me very well. And I think that is due to the time and the experience that we have together.
I think getting to that clarity and that perspective is so incredible. I love that you got the outpouring of responses and support.
Mm-hmm.
This community is so supportive for the most part. So, I love that you went out to them and received that back. And I think in a way, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did it feel like you were just putting your family first, your daughter, yourself, and your husband, instead of continuing to go through this difficult roller coaster emotional toil? Being really happy with what you have, which is already amazing, right?
Yeah, I put my mental health first.
Mm-hmm.
It was like me, like my mental health has to be okay. Like, what
Good.
will it look like if I continue to do IVF to expand my family and it continues to fail? Like, I don't want to put my family through that, or
Right.
myself. Like, I don't want to go through that like anymore. I already did for 10 years. Like, it's time.
To keep having to explain it
You
to your
have
daughter
to,
once
yeah,
she's
there has to
aware.
be, yeah, there has to be a time where you have like acceptance. And when I do ask my daughter, I'm like, do you want a sister or a brother? She's like, no. Like, she thinks it's like horrible. She's like, no, I want to share
Oh,
you. And I'm like, good answer.
I think that's so wise too, because she probably, she feels that way, of course, but that answer also is could help one find peace with the end result.
Yeah.
Right?
And listen, she's little, so she probably doesn't understand the capacity of it. And maybe one day she'll be like, I want a sibling, but I don't think it'll happen anytime soon.
I think kids are just wiser sometimes than we realize. I was told this by
Hmm.
my mom, and she went through issues as well. And she had a full-term stillborn before me, and so I was this like miracle baby. And this is so long ago that it's just really hard to figure out why, and even at a top hospital, But I guess when they finally told me about it before I heard about it from someone else, I guess I just really seemed like I understood, or maybe had already figured out I was supposed to have an older sibling. And it since then it's just been a part of what we understood that our parents went through. Um, and
Hmm.
I don't know, it almost like looking back on it now, I don't know how I really understood at that age, but somehow
Yeah,
they do. So
that's a good point.
anyway, um, so we had one more, again, related to this whole journey, which we've been talking about, but just about how it affected your relationship with your husband, and just how you work through that. Obviously this is such a hard journey to go through. It takes a toll on relationships. Hopefully you come out stronger if you're able to play on each other's strengths or be there for each other's weaknesses. But how one follower wanted to just know a little more about that and how you two work through that.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, if I could get in a time machine, I would go to therapy with my husband. And so that's something that I didn't do. I just did it myself. And there was a lot of resentment. There's a lot of resentment. And even like he didn't know how to really support me through my pregnancy because I had so much anxiety. And after the baby was born, I had a lot of postpartum anxiety. And so there was a lot of friction and resentment there. And it took a little while for us to work through it. And I think what's important to understand is that every person grieves and processes grief very differently. And so, like, holding space for that person and how they choose to process grief, but ensuring that, like, they have a safe place to go and talk it out with a licensed therapist.
Mm-hmm. And so you guys work through it regardless without the therapy, obviously, but
Yeah.
you find
It
a
was just
way.
like too late now at that point, but yeah, you figure it out.
We're still a wonderful family unit. So do you have any final words of advice, inspiration, maybe personal mantra, something? We love to leave, new intended parents with that from our wonderful guests like you.
Yeah, there's a few things. Number one, self-advocacy, community, and healing. Like those are the three pillars that I like
Yep.
etch them, like write it down.
Yep. I'm like
Self-advocacy,
writing it down
community, and
right
healing.
now.
And then also that it's okay to be emotional, right? It's okay to like really grieve throughout the process. You're grieving what your body is supposed to be doing. And really brush up on your boundary setting statements because you will face people that are going to ask you, like, when are you going to get pregnant? Like, are you going to give your
Mm-hmm.
child another sibling? Like, boundary setting statements are like the little tokens that you need in order to survive, like the different holidays, like why you don't want to go to Thanksgiving dinner with your family. Yes, it's a tradition, but like you don't have to go. If it affects your
Mm-hmm.
mental health, you don't have to go. And so just being okay with like protecting your mental health and like staying true to your boundaries.
And having those statements ready in advance can just relieve you of
Mm-hmm.
the stress of
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you'll be asked something in front of people, or wondering if you'll be in a situation where maybe you weren't going to a baby shower or something, but suddenly there's a birth announcement at another event that you weren't expecting, or if you just get questions, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's such good advice to just figure out your answers in advance. I think therapists and experts like you and fertility coaches can also really help
Mm-hmm.
with what those answers are, and feeling good about them and not feeling guilty with,
Yeah.
with your answer, as you shouldn't. Um, okay, so finally, I hope this is the easiest question so far, but just a couple more about infertile teas. Can you just leave us with where can we find you, and what is your favorite product, and what's your most popular product with your customers and fans? And
Oh my
again, a
goodness.
reminder to everyone that you'll be able to choose one of these or any others if you win our giveaway, which will be coming up very soon.
Gosh.
Infertilities.com, right?
Yeah, I'm like, where can you find me? Infertile Teas, yeah. On the Instagram,
Instagram.
infertilities.com. And then I'm not wearing it today, but like one of our top selling products is like my favorite. It's the 1 in 8 t-shirt. It's like white. I have it in white or gray, and it's 8 hearts. The first heart is pink and the rest are red. And I launched it Valentine's Day earlier this year. Was it this year? Yeah. Wow. This year's
What
been
year
like
is
so
it? I
long.
mean,
I'm like,
I
where am I? And I love that it's just a subtle way to say like I'm 1 in 8 without saying like I am 1 in 8,
don't.
you know? And
I
so
do
that
love.
is like hands down my favorite, my favorite.
Is that the most popular as well? I also
The
love
most
that you do
popular, yeah.
seasonal items, but they're always sold
Hmm.
out. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's the most
so get them
popular. That's my
fast.
personal favorite.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for anyone who sees when she does seasonal items related to holidays, get them fast
Oh
because.
yeah, we've got a really cute holiday lineup coming up.
Oh, I'm
October,
excited.
I think. Yeah,
I can't wait to see
October. Oh my
that.
gosh, it's coming.
It is. I know. It's like, what year is it? Oh, it's almost the holidays.
Yeah,
um,
stop. I can't even go there.
well, thank you again for all of your thoughts today and just for everything you do for your followers and fans of your brand and just this community overall, sharing your story and being so open about helping people learn how to advocate for themselves and just also helping them wear and own their journey through such cute apparel that we love. And if anyone has questions you didn't get to ask Marilyn or us, please feel free to DM us after this. We're always here for answers. And if anyone has other topics you'd like me to bring to these lives in the future, please also let me know. Always love the feedback, and thank you for reaching out in the past. And I guess with that said, I hope you have a great rest of your day and feel
Thank
better.
you. Thank
Everyone feel
you.
better.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.